I had known her since her conversion in Lawrence several years earlier, and when Mara sets her mind to something seemingly impossible, starts to look a problem. It started simply enough. The ladies started cooking lunches that one of their husbands sold to the attendees of the Friday congregational prayer. In time, they raised enough money to put on a fundraising dinner, at which they collected some $15,000 in pledges. Then a church on the edge of campus came up for sale, but the price was way out of reach. Nevertheless, the ladies' heroic efforts to obtain a new mosque had gained fame throughout the area, and excitement had grown. It began to be known as the Ladies' Mosque Project. This is when the men took over. And in no time at all, foreign students from the Arabian Gulf raised hundreds of thousands of dollars by soliciting contributions back home. The money raised by the students, plus the $200,000 the community received for the original Lawrence Masjid, which they sold, was enough to buy the church. Unsurprisingly, though, the ladies' vision of a women-friendly masjid never panned out. In the end, money talks. So after a period of heated disagreements on how the new mosque would be run, those who raised the majority of funds were ceded control. So what was once known as the Ladies' Mosque Project soon faded from the community's memory. The new mosque did have a larger prayer hall, and the leadership never officially prohibited women from praying in it. But when they designated a poorly maintained, inadequately vented, dreary room on the third floor in the back of the building as the ladies' area, and posted signs and arrows directing to it, the matter was fixed in most of the community's mind. Every once in a while, a woman could be seen praying in the main prayer hall, but much as before, a few disconcerted stares, or an occasional reminder that there is the ladies' area upstairs, was enough to ensure that that infrequently happened. That is, a woman praying in the main prayer. My children actually were unexcited about the new mosque. I think they were not expecting things to be appreciably different. The building might have been bigger, but they were feeling ever more out of place there. They gave the ladies' area a try, but they were nervous about being alone up on the third floor in the rear of the building at night and in a poorly maintained area. My two oldest had also reached the stage when they found the whole notion of gender segregation extremely offensive. To most Americans, segregation recalls, most people in the United States anyway, segregation recalls our nation's dark history of discrimination and equates with injustice, ghettoization, inferior representation and influence, subordinate status, limited access to service and facilities, and denied privileges. That's what segregation has always represented in the United States. And when you mention segregation in the United States of America, the reaction is visceral. People equate that with all the evils of slavery and post-slavery. My children did not live during the era of overt and forced racial segregation in America, but they had often learned of it and absorbed its negative associations. Jamila, being the oldest, had been the first of my daughters to go with me to the masjid when she was little. At just several months old, she was a regular at the evening prayer at the University of San Francisco. She had logged more time with me over the years in that masjid than most of the Muslims in the Bay Area. When her younger sisters started coming with us, they were mostly following Jamila's lead. I was therefore well aware if Jamila stopped coming with me to the mosque, her younger siblings probably soon would follow suit. Jamila was 14 the last time she accompanied me to the mosque. She had been battling typical problems that come with adolescence in America. I won't try to list them here. Suffice to say, it was a troubled and unhappy period of her life. It had also been almost a year since the previous time she came along with me to the prayers. It didn't seem like a good moment to question her motivations. I'm talking about the last night she came with me to the mosque. She did not bring a scarf this time, and she told me she would not join the prayers. She only wanted to sit off to the side against the wall and watch. As we finished the prayer, I looked over to Jamila. She smiled faintly through a sadness that told me she would never be coming again. I do not really know what was behind that expression. I wondered if, while we were praying, she was thinking of all the times we had spent together in the mosque, of all the times I prayed with her in my arms when she was small, or of all the times she sat in my lap while I chatted with the brothers after the prayer, or of all the times she stood with me in the prayer lines. She could have been thinking of any one of 1,000 things, but I knew through the silent communications that occurred between a father and a daughter. I knew through the silent communications that occurred between a father and a daughter that all of that had come to an end. As I anticipated, it was not long before Sarah and Fatin gave up on the mosque. I don't want to imply that my children finally abandoned Islam. There were no indications of that being at stake. My chief regret is that my children would be separated from a source of tremendous beauty and strength, and their experience of Islam in America would be so much more handicapped than mine. Their faith experience, like so many Muslim women in America, would be much more solitary, much more alone. As I already said, this will not be a personal plea. My children are now fully grown and have been severed from the mosque so long that, for better or worse, they have learned to live their faith without community. Furthermore, the mindset and views that discourage women from the mosque are so entrenched and unyielding that any change in the outlook of the American Muslim establishment is likely to be slow and incremental. It is happening, but it's happening very slowly. Hence, too negligible to appreciably affect my children's disaffection and alienation from the mosque. I speak instead for the Muslim second generation and converts of the future. While I'm not optimistic about change, I feel religiously obligated to appeal on their behalf. The Muslim community of America has already witnessed mass exodus of homegrown descendants and converts from the mosque culture, and very many of these ultimately opt to live outside Islam. Is it not time to confront the obvious? I also said I'm not angry, but this was not always the case, I have to confess. I was terribly disheartened when my girls stopped coming to the masjid. So much so that every time I went to the prayers and saw only men there, I couldn't help but think of my daughters and all of the women like them who surrendered to the maleness of the mosque and stayed away. From the day they quit the mosque to the present day, there's not a single congregational prayer I've joined in which I don't feel the oppressive emptiness of their absence and the absence of others of their generation like them. What makes matters worse, and I think this makes it worse of all, is I'm so alone in these feelings. Why do women need to pray in the mosque? The brothers asked. Others said, if they feel they have to go to the mosque, then why don't they just pray in the ladies' area? Some say, if they want to pray in the main room, who will stop them? Still others remark, I know a lady convert or a second-generation female who prefers female seclusion. I tried to explain it to them as best I could, again and again and again, but in the end, we just end up talking past each other. Until finally I could no longer bear to come to the prayers anymore, as they epitomized for me the spiritually enervating, invasive inequality of faith experience my religious community presents women. Although I never could have conceived it back when I prayed in the University of San Francisco Masjid, during those majestic moments, spiritual moments of divine embrace, that for the next several years, except for the Friday prayer, I did all my prayers away from the mosque. Gradually, the resentment receded into a sort of numbed despair, caught between the recognition that the mosque establishment was not about to question centuries of custom anytime in the foreseeable future, and a growing spiritual longing to rejoin my brothers in the prayer line. I thought long about what I was accomplishing by avoiding the mosque. How was I better serving the interests of my children, or other homegrown Muslims, or the community at large? I really had conflicted feelings. On the contrary, I had only demonstrated that when the going gets hard and frustration builds, it is most appropriate to abandon our causes, and that love for fellow Muslims should be reserved for those who see things the way I do. That was the message that maybe I was sending my children.